Tamara, Susan, James, Jasmine, Michigan in the house. Yeah, you have your daughter. James has a daughter that lives in Fort Myers. I've been down there. Hello, Ann. How are you doing tonight? Glad everybody could make it. Got a lot to cover tonight. We have some updates on some cases that I want to talk about, just some things of prior unfound cases, just information going on here and there. So we're going to do that. Of course, as always, we're going to talk about this Friday's episode. It's a little bit of a unique episode this Friday for a few different reasons that I'll get into. Full Metal, what's going on? So we have a lot to do, and then I have a couple questions that have been asked of me today. You know how I love to take questions from the audience, so I will be answering those before the show is over tonight. Cherie, good evening, and vibrations. Doing a little Beach Boys there, Cherie, I guess. That's where I get that from. Michelle, how are you tonight? Good to see you. But this past weekend, as some of you know, I played in a disc golf tournament right here in Tampa. Of course, the weekend before last, I was up in Floral City, and I actually had to stay at a place up there. But this past weekend, I was over there in Tampa, over in Hillsborough County. So I played over there. We played in like monsoon, tropical storm conditions on Saturday. It was miserable. Rain and 30 to 40 mile per hour winds, which weren't fun. And then on Sunday, it was a beautiful day. And I shot okay. I mean, I didn't do very well in my division, but I thought I played reasonably well. I don't play that course that often because it's way over there. It takes me like, even though it's just over in Tampa, it takes me like 45 minutes to get there. And it's a fairly difficult course. A lot of out of bounds, a lot of trees and stuff you want to avoid. So I thought I played okay. Fishing, what's going on tonight? So that's what I was doing this past weekend. My feet took a beating, just absolutely. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to see my brother, who just happens to be a shoe salesman, and he's been doing that for many years. And we're going to try to figure out what's been going on with my feet. My feet were so tender by the end of the third round on Sunday that I've been really trying to keep off my feet since then. Combination of things. Probably the wrong shoes, and then it being wet, and you get, your feet get wet, and then you start twisting on them, and it really bothers the skin, on and on and on. But other than that, I think I recovered from this weekend pretty well, and I was fairly pleased with how I played. And I'll be playing the next tournament, not this weekend, but next weekend over here, not too far away, about 15, 20 minutes away. So I'm looking forward to that. In fact, I'll be playing 2 weekends in a row over there. Twinkle, how are you? Whitney, what's going? Whitney is in the house. Love that. So I was fairly busy this weekend. So if you didn't see me on social media too much, that's why. I went to the post office today. Maybe some of you in this group are, I'm not going to answer that, girl Brazilian. I was at the post office today, and some of you may be wondering why. If some of you are transcribers, you should be looking for your books in the mail. Finally got them all together. The transcribers for Volume 1 of Season 2, which is the book that just came out. You will be getting like 3 different packages with books in them. So be looking for them. Once again, for the transcribers for Volume 1 of Season 2, I would say I spent about an hour to an hour and a half in the post office, filling out all the the packages and putting the books in there and everything else. And then you take them up to the counter, and then it takes a while for them to process everything. So I spent quite a bit of time in the post office, only to then come out of the post office, which is the post office. What is it? Is it? It's not Bel Air Bluffs. It's like Reddington Beach or Indians Rocks Beach. Actually, the post office is very close to where they found Kelly Rothwell's car. Of course, that's a case we covered way back in 2016, very early on in Unfound's existence. Well, that's a disappearance that happened right in this area, coincidentally, where her car was found very close to where this post office is that I was today. And I came out only to find out that there was some Playboy Playmate in the post office, and she has her Instagram account on her car and Playboy Playmate, and she was a Playboy Playmate. I have no idea who it was, but so that was kind of weird. You never know who you're going to run into out here at the beach, so that was kind of funny. So there you go. You never know, right? But I got that done and sent those packages out, and all of you should be receiving them. It's gonna be a while. I don't send them overnight. So if you are a transcriber for Volume 1 of Season 2, the book, the one starting with Kent Jacobs, then be looking for those. It's a total of 7 books that each of you will be getting. What do we got here? Whitney, Sharon. Am I dedicated to disc golf, Sharon? You know, I guess I am. It's the major sport that I play. Of course, I weightlift too, but that's not really a sport, not at least the way I do it. But I've been into it for several years. As I've been very honest about the last few years, I've had some problems on the disc golf course mentally, concentrating and really throwing the disc where I want to. But the last 2 tournaments, um, I played pretty well, considering. And I think this is going to set up, me getting back because, time in, 2015, I was a pretty good player. And then just something mentally, I just lost something mentally, and it's been very up and down and all over the place since then. But I would say the last 2 tournaments I've played are probably the best 2 tournaments I've played back to back since 2015. So that's very positive for me, and I'd like to be good at it. I don't want to go out there and stink. So, but doing Unfound, I don't have as much time to play as I used to or practice as I used to, but that's fine. But I do love the sport, and I would, if you're a parent and you want to get your kids into a really good sport that's not very well known, disc golf is a very good choice, and it's fairly cheap to play, and it can be played in public parks. I'm a big fan of the sport. I watch all the tournaments that are live on YouTube and elsewhere. So I don't still play it. I take an interest in it. I read about it. I watch tournaments, etc. Twinkle says, never heard of disc golf. Well, I didn't ever heard of disc golf until I was like 40 years old, Twinkle. So there you go. You aren't living under a rock. Hello, Marcus. James Grove saying hi from Oklahoma. That's cool. LaFord, what's going on? Hey, Ed, how's Unfound going tonight? 9 minutes in, we're doing pretty good, EB. Talia says, we have a disc golf course at Pine Bituming Lake here in Greenville, PA. Never played, but need to try. Talia, I don't know if you know this, but I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania. I went to Grove City College, which of course is very near Greenville, PA. I'm very familiar with Pine Bituming Lake. And my father lives in the Butler area, and I was just there back in September, and the big disc golf course up in that area is the one at Moraine State Park. It's they hosted the disc golf world championships there back in 2015, and they have a very, very, very nice disc golf course there. Very, very good, very scenic, very tough. They take really good care of it. I've played the one in Grove City as well. So I've played a few around that area, Talia, but I've never played the one in at Pymatuming Lake. Show. I'm gonna try to show the Disco's boss, Twinkle. Thank you. LaFord. Okay, so there you go. LaFord. Okay. So I was at the post office, played in the disc golf tournament this past weekend. Regarding the poll for Brandy Meyer's case from this past Friday in the discussion group, uh, a large majority of the people decided that um, that had this girl that kind of misled cops at the beginning. Of course, Kristen and I talked about that. Um, a majority of the people were not convinced that would have changed everything, that Brian Miller would have been caught at the time. But the majority of people picked the choice where it said he would have become a suspect sooner. Okay, they are not convinced that had that not happened, the cops would have caught Brian and figured it all out before he killed these other girls, the two girls that were on the bicycles, for example. But they think that he would have become a suspect sooner, which I guess I can go along with that. As I will continue to say, as I wrote about in the Patreon blog, if you are not a Patreon supporter, I hope you will consider it for as low as $2 a month if you'd like. What I wrote about in the blog was that I'm still very unclear of what the police were thinking at the time. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm sure if you talk to some investigator at the time, he'd have his reasons or her reasons for what they did. But certainly all these years later, a lot of question marks about why Brian Miller, although he was talked to at the time simply because his house was on the path that Brandy was taking, why it eventually didn't come back around to Brian Miller and then do um, a tougher interrogation on him. It's a little hard to understand. So I'm going to stick by that. I think for the foreseeable future, as that being my attitude regarding Brandy's disappearance and the investigation that was done afterwards. But a majority of the people picked that he would have probably become a suspect sooner, but I don't think that they're convinced that he would have been charged with her disappearance or anything like that at the time. Okay, so there you go. That's what the poll said. What do we want to talk about? Let's go through some things that are going on with some of Unfound's cases. Let's talk about Lacey Buenfil first, but I'm not even sure this is connected to Lacey, frankly. But within the last few days, in fact, it's been a national story now. It's not just a story local to the Ocala area or Florida. I've actually seen this in the national, like some national news sites. But there have been remains that were found in the Ocala National Forest within the last 5 days. And in trying to figure out as best I could, they said fire or Forest Road 5 or Fire Road 5, and they don't give the exact coordinates for obvious reasons. They don't want looky-loos and everything, but just trying to figure out where that road goes. I don't think it's necessarily a public road. I think it's a road that they use, if some sort of fire breaks out. It's just the only reason the road exists. But it is in the general area of where Lacey disappeared. If you're going to say that Altoona, Florida is kind of close to where she disappeared, whether you want to believe the story that she did go out in this truck with that guy and ran off, I don't personally believe that, but maybe some people do. It is in the general area of where she disappeared, and I've had a few messages back and forth with Cindy Fox, who was the guest for that episode. However, I have to tell you, the way it's being described in all the news reports, and I've gone to a couple different sources, but it's all basically the same story. I'm not convinced that that the remains that they have found are Lacey. Now, you should know that the remains were buried, so it makes sense to believe that whoever's remains those are, the person was murdered, probably, most likely. Okay, so I think that that is a decent assumption at this point. So the remains were buried, and I think that a large majority of the people who know about Lacey's disappearance know that she was murdered or, somehow given a hot shot, strangled, shot, something like that. Unfortunately, I don't know of any too many people who think that um, she ran off or she committed suicide. So these remains were buried, which probably means that foul play is involved. Now, but what makes me think that it's not Lacey is because the person, I guess they were hunters, and the guy happened to notice something and went over there and started, doing something in the ground. He said it really smelled bad. And Laura's saying, I thought they said it was a mountain. Maybe that's the most recent news, Laura. I unfortunately have not been able to keep up on it today. In the reports that I read from yesterday gave no um, gave no gender to the remains, but it's certainly possible that it could be a male. But being that there was a smell that was coming from and everything would lead me to believe that it's not Lacey. I personally don't believe she disappeared, 8 years ago, 2011, I think it was. If she was buried, there probably isn't going to be any smell left. I don't believe. So, and I kind of get the feeling from Cindy that she kind of feels that way as well. We could be totally wrong, but just the way it jumped out like that, that part of it about the smells and everything led me to believe I don't think that this is Lacey. The other big part of this is there are several people who have disappeared in what we would call the Lake and Marion County areas, which is where that is. Ocala National Forest, kind of covers a couple different counties. And there are several disappearances in that area. So it's not like Lacey is the only person to have disappeared in that area, let's say in the last 10 years. There have been several, maybe 7, 8, or 9 people. And I think it's much more likely that is one of those people who disappeared much more recently, let's say within the last year, last 2 years, maybe going back to, October 2019. Let's go back maybe 2 years, maybe. And that's, once again, I don't know any more than any of you do at this point. And you may be right, Laura, that maybe they've already identified it as being a male. Of course, that's not Lacey then. But there have been some men who have disappeared in that area, so that is possible. But there are some women who aren't Lacey who disappeared in that area as well. So even if they were to say, well, it's a female, that wouldn't even mean that it's Lacey. So I just don't know. But it's been national news. I think that it is going to put Lacey's disappearance, in the forefront of people's minds again, which is good. But I think it also shows that in many of these kinds of disappearances that happen out in the swamps, out in the forest, out in the woods, out in the country, that many times you're going to have to rely on luck to find the remains. I think that's, and whoever this person is, whose remains it is, this person was obviously found by luck. Right place, right time, and I think eventually we will know who the remains are of, whose remains they are, and and we'll be able to take a look at the circumstances of that disappearance and that murder, and try to figure out what happened. At this point, I've looked on NamUs, going through their database. Like I said, 8 or 9 people. You might be able to narrow it down to maybe five. Um, it could be a possibility. I looked at the circumstances, and I think that there's a lot of different possibilities of who it could be right at this. There's not any one case that really jumps out at me that I say, yes, it has to be this person. I'm not to that point in what I know. Once again, no more than any of what you know. Just being able to go to the Charlie Project, go to NamUs, kind of look back and forth. It's really hard to say whose remains those might be. Twinkle says, Ed, do you keep flowchart of these cases? Twinkle, I'm not sure what you mean by a flowchart. Maybe you can better explain that, because flowchart could mean a lot of different things. What I do is I do keep statistics on disappearances, as far as gender, as far as you know, I keep a stat on occupation of suspects, and that's how I always know that police officers, as far as legal professions, professions that are not illegal, like drug dealing, of legal professions, lawful professions, police officers are the number one occupation involved in disappearances of suspects. So I do keep some statistics, Twinkle, just for my own knowledge, because I think that it'll help me somewhere down the road, because I do want to eventually speak to college students and criminal justice majors about missing persons cases, and I think some of those statistics may be helpful, especially since we have covered so many cases now, 150 cases with all over the United States and Canada. That certainly gives us a nice sample. If you were doing a polling sample, 150 random people would really be a good sample for any topic. So I do keep statistics, but I'm not sure I know what you mean by a flow chart. I would be happy to answer a question. I just want to make sure that I'm answering what you specifically mean. So that's what's going on with what's going on in the Ocala National Forest. But like I said, it's good that we get to talk about Lacey and the possibility of these remains being hers. Of course, that would, it's a bittersweet type of thing. But I don't believe those remains are hers. Twinkle. Well, it does, Twinkle. It does feel good to help. That's what we try to do. Let's move on to Jonathan Estes's case. That trial has started. I don't think it's his wife Cindy is on trial now for the sale of the Bobcat, which was a major discussion point when we covered that disappearance a few months ago. Of course, Jonathan's sister Melissa was on the episode. I had an opportunity to talk to her within the last couple days. I had asked her if the trial had started. It has. And remember, this isn't a trial that has anything necessarily to do with Jonathan's disappearance. Okay, it doesn't. She's not being accused of murder, anything like that. What she is accused of is the theft and then sale of the Bobcat. That at the time that we did the interview, the Bobcat had not been found. But then it was found, I think, in August. It seems like it's been a couple months now. August, something like that. That it was found maybe a month after, 6 weeks after we covered that case. And that is why Cindy is on trial now. She has pled not guilty, and I believe that her defense is going to be that it was legal for her to sell it, that she and Jonathan did own it. That is her defense. Of course, Melissa and her family take a different attitude. That bobcat, and once again, if you don't know what a bobcat is, it's like a small earth mover type of machine. Um, the Estes family's standpoint is that the bobcat was Jonathan's father's, and that Cindy had no right to sell it. And if you'll remember, uh, what they've learned, even before they found it, was that she sold it for well under what it was worth. Luckily, the bobcat was eventually found, and the buyer of it was found, but uh, I don't believe, at least I've not heard anything that leads me to believe that this guy who bought the bobcat had anything to do um, with Jonathan's disappearance. I don't think that this guy knew at all that this bobcat was connected to Jonathan and Estes at all. I think, it is still suspicious why a guy wouldn't be a little leery about buying something that was so underpriced. I don't know. But the belief is that he knows nothing about the disappearance, knows nothing, not an accomplice, nothing. So there's that. EB, I tell everyone to keep their eyes open while hunting, fishing, camping, because bones can be anywhere. EB, that's certainly true. Certainly true. That's a good attitude. Let's talk about another unfound case. Once again, a fairly new case. That was Austin Pivo, maybe 3 months ago, out of Idaho. And still no word yet whether the remains that were found on the Fort Hall Reservation are Austin's. I had a chance to just quickly send a message to Susan Pivo, his mother, today, and she has learned some things, but she has not said anything to me. And even so, even if she did, I don't know if I'd be able to talk about it or not. But she's learned some things. She didn't tell me what that was, but certainly no word yet as to whether the DNA from the remains matches Austin's DNA. And I happen to believe that whatever happens, Susan will let me know. But as of today, October 23rd, 2019, there is there's no result to those tests yet. And we'll just have to see where that goes. Even if is this going to be a situation like Tom Brown's case where the remains are found, it's identified with being Austin, and they still can't figure out what happened to him? Could be. Let's hope not. But it could be. And I think we just have to all be prepared for that. That just because the remains are found, they're identified as being Austin's, that may just be the beginning of trying to figure out what happened, not the end. But as of today, there's no word whether the remains are Austin's or not. I think it's really, really probable that they are. Much more probable than, of course, the remains that were found in the Ocala National Forest being Lacey's. But until they actually do the scientific tests and everything, I don't think that we can jump to any conclusions. Twinkle says, I'm scared of the woods and not just the wildlife. Okay, Twinkle. Cherie says, it's not community property if the title is in the father-in-law's name. Well, I agree with you, Cherie. Valerie, I'm here an hour and a half hour late, but here, Valerie, good to see you tonight. Let's take a question. And this one was funny. Shannon in the discussion group on Facebook asked me, what exactly is the plan for my hair? Am I getting ready to play a part in some Hollywood movie or something? The answer is no, I'm not. I have no designs on ever being in any movie, anytime, anywhere, which is funny. But I will admit that there's a few things that are going on with my hair. Okay, and you should know this. And I can be honest. I don't mind. If somebody's going to ask me and I'm choosing to answer the question, I'm going to answer it honestly and fully. Either otherwise, I just wouldn't answer the question. Um, there's a few things going on. First of all, you have to understand how old I am. I'm 49, and as many of you probably know, that a lot of men in their 40s, they start to go bald and and everything else. Well, I certainly have no worries about that. And as I've joked to some people, I think that I have a responsibility as a 49-year-old who has hair to grow hair to make up for all of the guys who have lost their hair and wish they could grow hair. And so I think I have a responsibility to them to, if I can grow my hair, I'm going to grow it. It also helps that um, I have a job with Unfound where there's nobody dictating how I have to dress or how I have to look or anything else. Okay. I also think that I should take advantage of that. That's just the way I kind of think. And on top of everything else, my friend Shay was here, and she hadn't seen me in 8 years. And she was looking at my hair, and she goes, "Ed, you don't have any gray hair." Well, I do have some gray hair. Well, James, there is gray hair. You just can't see it. You can't see it, especially on this kind of camera with these, the laptop, little camera. But there are certainly some gray hairs in there. But the thing is, the gray is much more visible when my hair is short. But when it's long, it seems like all of the hair that hasn't grayed yet covers up all the gray. So that's one more reason for me to grow my hair long. So it's kind of a combination of all these things put together. And then on top of that, I saw Keanu Reeves, who is just a few years older than I am. I think he is um, 54, maybe something like that. And, I really liked what he was doing with his hair, doing, what he's doing with his hair for the John Wick movies, kind of long and down to the sides like that. And I said, I can do that. So that's kind of what I've been doing. The disadvantages I have is that I don't have a stylist and all these other people who are making him look good every time he goes on, some talk show or anything. I have to do my hair myself. But that's kind of what I'm going for, I guess. And I've had my hair long. Um, Started first growing long the first time in after I stopped working at Star Trek, like between 2005 and 2008. I let it grow, but I was cutting it back and it would grow, but it was a lot longer. And then I got it all cut off in 2009. And then I started letting it grow again. Must have been 2015, 2016. And then I got it cut off again. And now I haven't had a haircut for a while, since like February or something like that. So that's what I'm doing with it. There's really no plan. There's no plan on how long it's going to get or anything. That's it. But Shannon, I appreciate the question, and I usually don't talk about myself, too much. I don't think. But I do realize that being that I do the show and all of you can see me once a week, I know that you've noticed my hair getting longer and longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. And you may be wondering, what is Ed doing? And so there's my explanation. So there you go. Let's get back to some of the topics that I want to cover. If you haven't seen it, but although let me see what some of those scare of the woods. Okay, yeah. BA says, Shuri, if you are in contact with Stormy, please tell her we hope she is well. Yeah, Stormy Dorsey continuing to go through her chemotherapy. I think she is on day 22. I think today was day 22. Just crazy. Just, and I of course hope that she has a full recovery and lives for a very, very long time. But brain cancer, obviously very dicey. You know, if the tumors pop up in the wrong place, then, you know, we know what can happen. But she's in day 22, smiling for the camera every day. I have not talked to her since I think the chemo started, but I do see the post that she is making, and she seems to be the happy warrior going through all of this. Twinkle says, "Nothing wrong with your hair. I wear mine like that too." Do you, Twinkle? Okay. EB says, "Grow long." Well, we're gonna see, EB. We're gonna see. Let's move on to another of Unfound's cases, but this is one from about a year ago. If you haven't seen Heather Grotman at the Lost and Found blog, who was my guest for the Dale Kerstetter episode, she has done very recently, within the last week, she has a new entry at her blog regarding Dale Kerstetter's disappearance. It's like part two. And I really have to compliment her for the work that she continues to do on that case. I think that more than anybody in this world, she has done more on that case than anybody. Anybody. And I think that really this last entry that I just read today, is even more eye-opening than anything that has been said about that case so far in the last 30 some years. I'm totally serious about that, and I couldn't be prouder of her. I couldn't have much. I couldn't have more respect than I do for right now in what she's done. I'm not going to ruin it for all you, but I'll, because I think you should go to the site and read it. Once again, it's the Lost and Found blogs. And she posted a link to it in the discussion group yesterday or the day before, and I've marked it as an announcement because it is an entry regarding one of Unfound's cases. But some of the highlights from this entry that she wrote, and it's fairly long, some of the still shots from the video that came out. If you'll remember from a few months ago, this video came out. They finally released it. It was really bad. Well, Heather has been in contact with some guy who has been working on it, trying to clean it up and things. And he's been able to still shot some photos from the video that are fairly clear. And it shows the possibility that there might have been more than one robber that night. Once again, I'm not here to steal her thunder. Go to her blog and read everything that she has to say. The pictures are also there so you can see them for yourself. But that was one of the revelations from the video being cleaned up. The other thing, which was a little mind-blowing to me, and I think that this puts the platinum theft in a totally different light, is that platinum being stolen is not rare at all. It's not an odd theft. Maybe it is today, but back in the 70s into the 80s, the platinum that was stolen from the Corning plant where Dale Kerstetter disappeared from was one of many thefts of platinum going back to the 1970s. Something that is, and I talked to Heather on the phone recently, and I even told her that's something I never could have guessed, ever. And she has even gone back and found news entries for all these different thefts and listed them. You should check that out. Very, very interesting. Okay? Great work that she has done. And then probably the other big point about her most recent entry, once again regarding Dale Kerstetter's disappearance and the theft of platinum, is that the backpack and this gun holster that were originally in Dale's truck after he disappeared, the police do not have them now. They've gone. They're vanished. They don't know what happened to them. So this is, once again, this is a very, very short, concise description of this most recent blog that Heather wrote at the Lost and Found blog. You got to check it out. Just absolutely, she did a great job. However, my honest opinion though is that as much as there is information there, it has not really changed my mind about Dale Kerstetter's disappearance at all. I think that he was in on it, and I think he got double crossed. That's what I believe. You should know in all these other thefts, nobody disappeared, no security guards got killed, nothing. It's only in Dale's that one at Dale's place is where a person disappeared. You can take that for what it's worth, but as much new information is out there, and once again, I think that you can maybe look at this in a little different light. There's nothing that I read there that changes my mind. I think that Dale um, ended up being a pawn in a much bigger plan that he didn't know what the huge plan was. I think that's what happened. Carrie says, sounds like Cooper theft now. You mean DB Cooper? Carrie, is that what it is? Um, exactly, Carrie. That's why I've always believed Dale was on an island somewhere. That's interesting, Cherie, that you think that he took off, and continued to live and was living somewhere else. Of course, if we knew what happened, we could just go solve it right now. But my instincts tell me that Dale got duped into something, and that he met his end not long after they left that plant that night. But I don't know what I'm supposed to hope for. Am I supposed to hope that he got away with this crime and stole that money and that got money from that platinum? Am I supposed to hope that? Am I supposed to hope that he is is a criminal and everything? Maybe for the family, but it's been 30 some years. Even if he did that, he's probably not alive now. But no. Sounds like copper theft, Cooper theft. We have abandoned village stripped of wiring, plumbing, copper. Can't type. Got a grand helping. Sounds like a copper theft. Well, that carry that may so copper. Okay, so you didn't mean DB Cooper, copper. Maybe but yes, but once again, I think that once you read the blog and see how many places have been where platinum was stolen, it's going to boggle your mind a little bit. It does mine, especially because to get copper or to get platinum, it's a lot harder than just taking some copper wiring and stuff out of a house. So, all right. So, what are we talking about? Jonathan Estes, Austin Pivo, Dale Kerstetter, Lacey Buenfil. So those are some cases. And I have a few more of Unfound's cases to talk about here in a second. But I'm going to answer another question. And this is from Suzanne. She's asking me, what am I planning to do for Halloween? Um, Not much. Um, Halloween is next Thursday, and probably. All right, Jasmine agrees with me. Great. I love it when people agree with me, Jasmine. Thank you. Um, Halloween next Thursday. First of all, you have to understand that Thursday generally these days in my life is trivia night. I had not been going for a long time, but I started going again. I thought that I was, you got to get out and do something. Yet I can so easily become a hermit and never leave my place ever. But I've started going to trivia on Thursday evenings. I'm on a trivia team that's been around for several years now, and I don't know. I don't know if I'll be. I don't. I'll have to see what my brother and his wife are doing because it'll be one of two things. Either I'll go to trivia for Halloween, and it'll just be like any other Thursday night, or I will go over to my brother's and his wife and he are on the trivia team too, but I don't think they'll be going because of Halloween. I'll go over to their place and just sit out in their driveway as the trick or treaters come by because their neighborhood gets crazy with trick or treaters. Like they usually give out over 300 pieces of candy in a few hours. So I'll either do one of two things: either go to trivia, or I'll go to my brother's place and just sit there with him and BS and watch as everybody, all the kids come by and get candy, and of course I'll be eating some candy too. So, Suzanne, if you're listening or if you're watching this later, um, it's a little bit up in the air what I'm going to do. Here's what I know I'm not going to do. I'm not going to dress up. So there you go. All right. So that if once again, if you have any other questions you'd like me to answer this evening, before we are done, you let me know. Anything else here? Anybody get in with any other questions? It doesn't look like it. Okay. Let's talk about, and I'm not going to get into it too deep. Of course, Cherie, laugh. Well, we know what happened. We could just go and solve it tomorrow. We have all our ideas. I know personally know a man that sold $100,000 worth of commerce from plant. Cherie, did he get away with it, Cherie? That's my question. What kind of plant was it? Twinkle, your brother's place sounds like a great place to be on Halloween. Twinkle, it is. That is certainly true, Twinkle. You were right about that. I remember the first time that I went over to my brother's place once I moved to Florida for Halloween, and I'm telling you, it's like right out of the original Halloween movie with Jamie Lee Curtis. Like kids, walking, that kind of neighborhood. That's what it looks like. It's just exactly like that. And everybody gets into it. Everybody decorates their places. It's really, really neat. So, did I get my flu shot, Valerie? No, I did not get my flu shot. Um, uh, Valerie, to be honest, I really don't get sick. I have allergies, but I don't get sick. Just don't. Let me talk about this. I know that many of you have heard all these stories out of Canadian that more signs were damaged in Canadian. Okay. Uh, and I know a lot of you have heard who did it and how the person got caught and and everything else. I really don't know how much I really want to comment on it at this point. Um, to my knowledge, there haven't been any official releases of any news regarding this. Um, I really don't know what to make of it. I'm thinking that the story is true, but what that is that then connected to the signs that were vandalized on the 4th of July. I think you could make that leap. I think you could, but I think what these recent revelations that this particular guy who is a prominent person in Canadian damaged these signs recently kind of goes back to what I said this summer when the other ones were damaged, that this doesn't feel like something that is um, if we were to believe that Tom was murdered, I said I don't think this has anything to do with his murder. I don't think this has anything to do with his disappearance. I don't think that this has anything to do with Sheriff Lewis. I think I said that back in early July. And being that this particular person got caught damaging Tom Brown's signs just recently, kind of goes back to what I thought in July, that it was somebody who just wants it to go away, thinks it's damaging the Texas's, yeah, reputation as a town. And I stood by that since then, even though that I've been there and saw some things that maybe could have made me lean in a different direction. But I think my first knee jerk reaction to the signs being vandalized back in July is right now that we know that there was somebody else who damaged ones more recently, and we kind of know why this person did it. BA says, I figured it was a Chamber of Commerce move. That's one way to put it, BA. That's not how I put it, but that's a good way to put it. And that's the way I kind of felt back then. And that's the way I feel, because if what they're saying is true about this recent story about a very prominent person in Canadian getting caught tearing down Tom Brown signs, if the stories are true, then that's the reason he was doing it. So because he thought that it was damaging the reputation and something was going on in Canadian that weekend, yada yada yada. And that's really all I want to say about it at this point, and I'm going to say it, but I will say this. I don't believe the tearing down of the signs in July or the tearing down of the signs recently have anything to do with Thomas's case at all. I think this is just a bunch of people's pride and ego, arrogance, and everything getting in the way of people trying to do the right thing with Tom's case. You know, citizens trying to raise awareness and other citizens just wanting it to go away. I think that's what's going on here. And that's all I want to say about that. Let's move on to this. BA says the sadness continues. It does. Steve Pankey, as you know, last Monday I did an interview with a person of interest in the disappearance and murder of Janelle Matthews. You're probably wondering, when's that going to come out? Well, what we did last week, as Cherie knows, as Carrie knows, I don't know if Heather's in here or not, but I wanted to get the audio on that interview as good as I could go. Once again, continuing to have audio issues with interviews given what Google is now doing with their phones, their Android phones. And I think we've got it to a point now where, you know, the volume is good and everything. The next part of now that I think that the audio is good as it's going to get given the situation. And I think that everybody is going to be able to hear him. I think they're going to be able to hear me. I think everything will be fine. The next part of this is trying to contact a couple of the people that he mentioned in that interview. And I need to give them an opportunity to give some sort of response. I promise all of you that the interview will be out before November 5th. So that gives me what, about 2 weeks. So that gives me some time to try to track down a couple of these people. I'm hoping that some of my assistants can help me in that. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Cherie, Heather, Emily, and Carrie. And emails, phone numbers, things where I can call these people up and introduce myself and tell them why I'm calling. And I'm just going to say what Steve had to say. And Steve knows that I'm going to do this. It's not a secret to him. I've not withheld anything from him. And because my attitude going in was, you know, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it my way, and I'm not going to be rushed to release this interview. No matter whether it comes out today or tomorrow or next week or whenever, I think that it's going to have the same effect. I think it is. So there was no rush, in my opinion, to release it, and we'll do it. You know, like I said, though, my promise is that it will be released before November 5th. It might be released without a lot of. I told Steve, I promised Steve that I would give him 2 days' notice before it's going to be released. Now, for the rest of you, it may surprise you when it comes out. I just don't know right at this second. But it will be released as a special episode, so it doesn't mean that it's going to be next Friday. It doesn't have to be a Friday. If it's a Wednesday, it's a Wednesday. If it's a Thursday, it's a Thursday. If it's a Saturday, it's a Saturday. And it's not going to have all the. It's going to probably have the music and introduction, but we're not going to do a lot of the other things that you usually get in an Unfound episode. I think in this one, we're just going to get right to the interview as quickly as possible because the interview is long, and so we're just going to do it that way, and we'll make it. When you listen to it, you will notice that it'll be different from your regular Friday episode. BA said, did you consider video with the person of interest? No. No, these days, BA with the way the audio has gone in the last few weeks, um, video is not going to make it any better. Um, and I don't know how much more the listeners are going to get from that, especially considering once again you started involving video, you start limiting the the time and place that people can partake in it. Okay? Because I think the way people are is, if you put something in video, then they feel like they have some responsibility to watch it, which means they can't watch it if they're driving their car, for example. The reason I like audio so much, just audio, although we have done some video, if I thought it was needed in some cases, like Travis Murrow's case, I will add a supplement to it. But audio allows the most amount of people to to partake in the program in the most different places necessary, possible. Where you start, doing it with video, and then once again, people start feeling they have an opportunity, especially if it's going to be a real video with the person of interest on the screen, and everything. Then they're going to be looking at for his facial expressions, etc., and that's really going to limit, um, how some people listen to this program. Because I think a lot of people do listen to it in the car or listen to places where video isn't possible. They listen at work. So there's that. BA says, I also wonder how it affects what they would disclose. BA, it may in some cases, but I don't think it did in this case. It may, but Steve Pankey, he has no problem talking. He's not the fastest talker, but he certainly has a lot to say. So I don't think that, I think that's just who he is. And I don't think that putting a camera on him, would make it any different. He's done it. He did a video interview, and he went for like 2 hours. I don't think. I don't think that the amount of information that he would have produced would have been any different, or any more, or any less with video. And I don't know how much more he could say. I mean, it's 3.5 hours, and he certainly said quite a bit. So there's that. But that's going to be coming out, I promise, before November 5th. Let's talk about another, if you can believe it, another unfound case, something that has popped up recently. Linda K. Carroll, which is an interview, which is a case that I covered roughly over 2 years ago. In fact, it's in the season 1, volume 2 book that just came out. That's now available on Amazon. Her case is in there. Well, yesterday, was it yesterday or Tuesday? Maybe Monday. No, on Monday. It was Monday. I got to speak with Linda's daughter, Melissa, for the first time. This was arranged through Cheryl Wheeler, who was my guest for the Linda K. Carroll episode from August of 2017. Cheryl is Linda's sister. And Cheryl, middle to the end of last week, asked me if I would like the opportunity to talk to Melissa. And I said, absolutely, I'll talk to her. So we got to talk. We talked about, if you go back and listen to that episode, once again from August of 2017, we talk about a lot of the things that are mentioned in that episode. For example, in the episode, Cheryl mentions how Melissa had said she had some dream or memory as a very, very little girl of her being in a car and her dad was there and they were out in the middle of nowhere and she thought her mother was there and then her mother wasn't there, something like that. And Cheryl talks about that in the episode. Melissa and I talk about that. She confirmed that is a true story, although to this day she does not know if that's a real thing that happened or if it was a dream. And we talked about things concerning her dad because she was raised by her dad. Her dad is the prime suspect in Linda's disappearance for many reasons. Unfortunately, Dennis is deceased now. Melissa told me a lot about her dad, and he had some issues and everything. Um, but we had a really, really good conversation. And I don't know if it's bringing us any closer to figuring out what happened to Linda or where she might be. I don't really know. But I think it's good that Cheryl has a relationship with Melissa because I know that they didn't have a relationship for a very long time. Not because of anything Melissa. It was really because of Dennis, Linda's husband. Um, but I'm just glad they're talking, and I hope they continue to do talk. I hope they continue to build on their relationship between Cheryl, who is Melissa's aunt. But I appreciate Cheryl asking me if I would do this, and I actually got to speak to Cheryl about it today for a while. Um, but I thought that, once again, Melissa, she was what, 5 years old at the time, not not didn't have a lot of insight, but I found her. I think that she was honest with me when I asked her questions about her father. I think that she does realize that her father is a very good suspect, very probable suspect in Linda's disappearance, and she totally understands that. So, but I had an opportunity to do that on Monday, and so you never know what. And once again, this is a case he covered a couple years ago, and I'm still talking to people about it. Somebody new, and I'm happy to do it. And if guests ever email me or call me up, hey, I'd like you to talk to this person, see what you think of what they're saying. I do that, and but I think in this case, I think that Melissa was very honest with me. I think that of course she wishes her mother was here for her today in 2019. But I really don't think that Melissa, Linda's daughter, knows, except for this one memory that she has, but she can't remember when it was. She's not even sure if it was a real memory or a dream. Other than that, I don't think, her father never said anything about Linda, rarely talked about her, admitted nothing to the day that he died that he did anything to her, just frankly never talked about Linda. So, what are you going to do? But I hope to, if Melissa wants to talk again sometime, I am surely open to it. Wow, we've been going for over an hour now. What do we else? What do we have else on? Let me just cover one national news story. I wanted to cover this last week, but just did not. Just I don't know. I guess I just ran out of time. And then we'll talk about what's this Friday's episode is going to be. First of all, Twinkle, it must be so hard to face the fact that your parent is a good person. We all want to look up to our parents. Yeah, Twinkle, just I think that with Linda Carroll's case, that's not the only one where children think that one of their parents killed, your father killed their mother. Or, I mean, look at Alyssa Turney's case, where her father probably, killed her. And of course, her sister was my guest last year. You know, you don't want to think about like that the way about your father or your mother or whoever. But, you know, if you don't, then you're just maybe living in a little bit of denial. But I don't think these. Um, but Twinkle, I understand what you're saying. Sheree, anybody see that up with the Knable disappearance? Things are getting crazy. Um, I'm gonna have to look that one up. Mother who helps find missing people. Oh, that one. Oh. I've not been keeping up with that, Cherie, so I really don't want to comment on it at this point. I'm just going to stay away from that. The one I want to talk about before we move is Erin Valenti. This was a woman. She was in San Jose. She was the owner or president or co-owner of some sort of internet company, some application, app company, for your phone. And she had gone to San Jose for business. She was out with friends. And then not long after that, she called her family and, she sounded strange. She wasn't making any sense. And then she, was found missing. And she was found dead in the back of a rental car, a half mile from her last known location. As you would probably figure, her family is angry that the police didn't do enough. They said that she voluntarily went missing. And what I didn't realize until I read it was that, the police had actually talked to her on the phone, while trying to find her. And of course, they were too late, and she was eventually found and deceased once again in the back of her rental car. And at this point, I have not, read anything that they think foul play is involved. So if that's the case, what could have happened? With a lot of these things, when you hear a story like this, where somebody's fine and then an hour later they're talking gibberish and things, that is not as unusual a situation as you might think. In fact, if you go on YouTube, I haven't done it recently, but you can go on YouTube and somebody has spliced together a bunch of reporters who were doing news stories, and right in the middle of it started talking gibberish. It does happen. People, the brain, the brain is still a big mystery. We know how the heart works, we know how the lungs work, but the brain, still a huge mystery. How memories are created, how they're stored, all sorts of different things. And my guess regarding this, once again, I have no proof, I know no more about this than any of you do, is that um, my guess is she was probably having one of these episodes. Maybe she had a panic attack. Could have been brought on by maybe some drugs she was doing. You have to remember something that, we talk so much about, the opioid crisis in the United States, just not here, but a lot of places, and how it's killed many people. Well, it's not just opioids, it's antidepressants and this and that and the other thing. And a lot of these things do not mesh well together. If you take this pill, you shouldn't be taking this. If you're taking this, you shouldn't be taking this. And this is what I think happens a lot of times in cases like this. That the person maybe has a panic attack all on their own, maybe it's brought on by a bad drug combination, and it kills them. Like Heath Ledger, taking all those mixture of drugs, it just slows down your heart to the point where it doesn't beat anymore. This is what I think, goes along in a lot of these cases. What can change it? Uh, I think that we do, at least here in the United States, I think we do rely too much on drugs to fix things. I think. And once again, between opioid crisis, we have we have a growing suicide problem, at least in the United States, especially among women. Women, the rate of suicide among women is quickly catching up to the rate by which men commit suicide. And I have it. Did she have a panic attack? Was this a bad mixture of drugs? I think a lot of these things should be on the table. I'll give you an example of a friend of mine who um, was under some stress. never had any heart problems ever before in his life. And before he knew it, one day his heart rate was up to like 180 to 200 beats a minute for no reason. And he's like my age, and they put him into the hospital, and I mean, never had any problems before. But I can tell you, if he had not been with other people, if he had just been by himself in his car, say driving across the United States, he probably would have died. But being that he was with other people, noticed the signs, got him to the hospital, and he didn't die, and he's alive, thankfully, today, these things happen. And as a guy, I've had what, 3 or 4 panic attacks in my life. You combine, that for whatever reason with, a heart issue, taking some antidepressants and everything. Who knows what can happen? I don't think anybody knows. I don't think doctors know. I don't think nurses know. I don't think scientists know. I just think it's one big good luck, So this is what it feels like in this case. As far as the other stuff, as far as the police not doing enough, I think just about every family that's ever had a disappearance happen can say that. I don't, that they think that she voluntarily went missing. That's true. I know the family doesn't like it, but, the big problem we have is the public who has never had a disappearance in their life, in their family, they don't care about it. They don't care about it until it happens to them. And then it's like, oh my God, how can this be? Well, we have to change that. We have to change it, little by little. I think that, people who have never had disappearances happen to them in their families, to people they care about, they should take the same attitude as people who do. And that is, police need to take this more seriously. The problem, once again, the public in general takes a very laissez-faire, hands-off, oh, well, what are you going to do? But then when it's their loved one that goes missing, they want the police, to be right on the case like that. And this is the problem we have. This is the problem. So what I would say to Aaron Valenti's family is I feel horrible for them. Horrible, horrible, horrible. It sucks. It's about the worst one of the worst things that can happen in this life, to lose a loved one, in something that might have been preventable. Absolutely horrible. But what they also have to understand is what they experienced is what all the 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 500,000 families have experienced before them. It's not unusual. But unfortunately, the Valentis only care about it now because they happen to them. So somehow we have to change that. Somehow. And that's not something that's going to happen overnight. I think that having done this for 3 years, uh, we're trying to do what we can do here at Unfound. And other people are trying to do the same thing. We're not alone trying to do this. Trying to change people's attitudes. But too many people just think that it can't happen to them. Michelle, absolutely. That could be next. Let's stop it first. That's right. I realize what the police's side of this is, and they're exactly right. Adults are perfectly allowed to walk out of their lives. As long as they don't have any crimes against them, as long as they're not defaulting on their taxes or whatever else, it's perfectly legal to walk away. But on the other hand, once again, families like the Valentis or who are just having disappearances now happen to them, they can't be so naive as to think that the police are just blowing them off. This is what goes on. All right? And the only way it's going to change is through public opinion. That's the only way it's going to change. So I understand how sad they are and everything else. I have the deepest, deepest sympathy for them, empathy, whatever the word is. But they have to realize this is just the way it is right now. We're trying to change it, but this is the way it is. So there's that. But my guess with Aaron Valenti, I'm guessing probably some drugs were involved. Maybe just was in the process of having a stroke brought on by drugs or something. Um, that would be my guess right at this point. I hope that we do find out, what the cause of death was. I hope we do. It certainly might help us analyze other disappearances. BA says aphasia, agnosia, stroke, space occupying lesion. Twinkle says some people have no empathy. Twinkle says it's all about me, 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 me. Michelle says absolutely, Ed, exactly. They could be next. Let's stop it first. Yeah. I don't know how much we can do to stop a lot of the disappearances that are going to happen in the future, but I think that we can eventually change people's attitudes toward disappearances. I think that is more likely to happen than us stopping disappearances altogether. Twinkle. Okay, Twinkle has to go. All right, Twinkle, thanks for taking part tonight. Good to see you. Let's talk about this Friday's episode. It's going to be a little bit different. The reason it is different is because I felt this was a good opportunity to talk about a fundraising, an awareness event that is going on. It started October 17th and will go on till November 7th. And it is called the Squeaky Wheel Tour. If that sounds familiar to you, it may be because back in 2016, so like 3 years ago, I had the founder of this Squeaky Wheel Tour on the program. Her name is Janelle Rapp. The reason she started it in 2006 is because she lost her sister, Regina Marie Boss, to a disappearance in the year 2000. In fact, we just passed the 19th anniversary of her disappearance. She disappeared October 17th, 2000. And the Squeaky Wheel Tour is a bunch of musicians getting together at different places to raise awareness and raise money for disappearance, missing persons causes. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to devote an episode talking about the tour that's going on, going to give out the information, and then I'm going to replay the interview I did with Janelle back in November of 2016. I think this is also important because Regina Marie Boss's disappearance is one of the ones that has never been mentioned on any update episode. Why? Because there haven't been any updates. This is as cold a disappearance as there is of Unfound's cases. And so I'm going to spend the first part of the episode talking about the Squeaky Wheel Tour. And then I'm going to play the interview I did with Janelle concerning Regina Marie Boss, her sister's disappearance. I'm going to guess that many of you have already listened to that episode, but I'm going to guess many people haven't, especially if they are newer to the program. The advantage that we have of playing it now is that, when that episode came out, the audience, Unfound's audience, wasn't very large. Probably at the time of that episode coming out, it had maybe 2,000 or 3,000 downloads a week or something like that. And we are much higher than that now. So I'm hoping that re-releasing it with new commentary by me at the end, with a much, much, much larger audience, especially, many people that I'm going to guess are hearing it for the first time. I'm hoping this can get something kickstarted for that case. I'm hoping. It's one, I would, as I state in the episode, it's one of Unfound's most confounding disappearances. Not quite as much as maybe Joshua Guimond's or Jason Jolkowski's, but Regina's is certainly up there. certainly up there. No good suspects. Just here 1 second, gone the next. But you're going to get to hear the interview, and once again, with new commentary by me at the end. But like I said, the first part, it's not a very long episode. I think it's like an under hour and 20 minutes or hour and 30 minutes, something like that. But the first part is talking about the Squeaky Wheel Tour, and then the interview is about Regina's disappearance, and then Janelle also, of course, talks about. But just remember, when she's talking from 2016. This is not a new interview I did with her. This is an interview from 2016. Much like when we did the third anniversary um, with Mary Lyle. So that's what's going to be happening um, this Friday. The other thing is I'll be doing the interview for next Friday's episode on Friday, around the time that this episode's coming out. I'm going to be doing the interview for next Friday, and I already have some things planned up for the next few weeks, so that'll be good too. So we're going to switch it up this Friday, but like I said, it's a great cause. It's something unique. There's no other group doing something like this for missing persons, this kind of thing. And I thought it was the right thing to do was to really get good publicity for it, and then once again being able to revisit a disappearance that has had no updates since Unfound covered it 3 years ago. We'll give it another shot. But that's about it. That is the program for tonight. I'm so happy to get to talk about so many of Unfound's cases, some things that are going on. I talked about my day at the post office. I ran into a Playboy Playmate. Believe it or not, how weird was that? The Brandy Myers poll. We talked about Lacey Buenfil in the Ocala National Forest, although I don't think that it's her remains. We talked about Steve Pankey. We talked about the sign damage, more sign damage in Canadian. Talked about disc golf, Jonathan Estes, Austin Pivo, Dale Kerstetter, Linda Carroll. Took some questions, one regarding my hair, the other one regarding Halloween. We talked about Aaron Valenti's disappearance and death. And is it mysterious? Isn't it? From out of San Jose, California. And then I finished up with this Friday's episode where we are going to be covering the Squeaky Wheel Tour. And we're going to give Regina Marie Boss's disappearance another chance to get attention for it. So that's it. I'm going to be going now. I think I still have some few work things to do before bed. But I will see you all. You hear me on Friday. And then I will see the think tank on Sunday evening. But thank you all for joining in tonight. So great to see all of your comments and everything. And we will talk again very soon. Thank you for all the support. And thank you for tuning in tonight. Good night.